going on, everyone? Chris with Journals, Comics, and Pop Culture. This is our top 10 hottest selling comics of the week, our weekly video series brought to you by PopCultureZone.com. Before we get into this week's top 10 books, don't forget to check out PopCultureZone.com's. Their links are below. Check them out if you're interested in getting your hands on some awesome exclusive and incentive variants at affordable costs, CGC slabs, and of course all different kinds of pop culture items, including toys and statues. And if you're buying raw books, they ship at a flat rate fee of only $4.99. Pop Culture Zone is also on eBay, where they still hold a 100% customer feedback rating with over 8,000 ratings this year alone. Those links are below. Check them out and make sure you follow them on eBay as well.
That's right, Chris. What do we do right now? It's a segment that you drive, that you do so well. That again, not only do you research the interviews for our guests, you research this, look at the numbers, and you got some interesting takes on the top 10 look back props or flops. That's right. We take the top 10 comic books from cover price on a Monday, see how it does all the way through the week. Our show is on Sunday. Chris takes the three most interesting books off of that list and gives them and dissects them and breaks it down and tells you what all the sales were and percentages are and stuff like that. He'll give you props or flops, as we will too. But we want to hear from you guys if you think these specific books are props or flops. We'll get to those three books in a hot second, but right now we're going to go through the top 10. That's right. At number 10, we have Mind Management. Number 1. At number 9, we have Star Wars Darth Vader. Number 6. At number 8, we have Batman 423. That Todd McFarlane 2022 Mega Con foil variant. At number 7, we have The Boys. Number 1 at 6. Guys, that first episode of The Boys is ridiculous. At number 6, we have Speed Racer. Number 1. Number 5, we have Thor, God of Thunder. Number 2. Number 4, we have Miles Morales, Spider-Man. Number 38, the Scan variant, 150. Number 3, we have Star Wars. Number 17, the first appearance of Quinlan Vos. At number 2, we have Avengers Forever. Number 6, the first appearance of Vibranium Man. A T'Challa variant, first appearance of Star Panther. And number 1, we have Grimm. Number 1, the Flaviano second print. Guys, this is a really diverse list. It's not, overly Marvel. It's good to see a few of these indies on here as well. I'm liking what we see here.
All right, my number 3 pick is, Jeff, you had me cracking up when you talked about the first episode of The Boys. The Boys number 1 is my first pick. Oh my God, when you said,
it was like, that's something you've never seen on TV before.
Oh my God.
I don't know, Otto, if you've seen.
Oh my God, I can't. It's something I wish I never saw, but it was one of the greatest things I've seen. I don't know how else to say it. Like, yeah. You're expecting one thing and you're like, okay, I get it. Oh. And then you're like, no, I don't get it. Uh-huh. And then you're like, oh my God, did they really do that? Then I said, how the F did they do that?
Oh God.
It was crazy. It was crazy, man.
No spoilers in the comments either.
Yeah.
If I could just make one comment, unfortunately I've never read this run, but from what I've heard from people in the community, and this is usually, maybe I can say this the right way. You read a book, does the movie always live up to the expectations? It's very difficult to do. Like Ready Player One was one of the greatest books I ever read. The movie was phenomenal, but the book was still better, but they both made it good. With The Boys, I really feel that The Boys has surpassed expectations of what the book could have done because of the acting styles. You know what I mean? Of the people that they picked to do this. Anthony Starr is just, he's up there with your top 3 or 4 villains right now. You know what I mean?
Horrendous. It's just incredible how vile how he exudes vileness. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I mean, the only person I hated him more than him was Joffrey. From Game of Thrones. So,
hell yeah. So. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Hey, you know what? And you make great points, because I think what you just said is going to play into how I'm looking at this book and if I'm going to give it props or flops. But let's just look at the numbers, obviously. And folks, if you don't know, if you haven't watched this before, we take the sales data from cover price from when it hit the list last week. And I crunched numbers as of today for what it's done this last week, and we compare them. So when this book hit the top 10 last week, it was trending upward 119%. Last week's high 9.8 sale was 400. This week, $399. So right there, $1 less. Last week's high raw was $125, and this was an error that says this week's average raw, but it's supposed to be high, $124. So how ironic is the high 9.8 sale last week, $1 more, and then the high raw was $1 more. I just thought that was pretty funny. Now, if you look at this book and what it's done over the last couple of years, since we knew the show was coming down the pipeline, there's been minor ebb and flow, okay? And you got to understand what the comic book market has done over the last couple of years too. We had the initial, boost and boom in 2020, and then we had the 2021 summer peak, right? And it's had its own ebb and flow in the market. This book has held up very well. I mean, it's come down and come up, maybe like as the seasons come, and if that's what's influencing this book. But the one thing that I really liked about how this book is trending is that it's not doing anything extremely crazy. So we didn't get a third season and, now it's going to go up $100 to $200. It's trending upward. And we know that Cover Price picks its books based on units sold. It's not like, let's pick top 10 because it hit a record high sales or something like that. It's increases in units sold. This book is moving more units, but the price is still being, substantially healthy in terms of what it's been doing on the market. What does that tell me? Well, it could tell me that maybe there's not a lot of change in terms of the amount of books on the market, but it tells me as well that at least nobody's FOMOing out and spending some exuberant amount when they don't need to. And I'm going to say this, and this is going to Otto's point. I am thoroughly enjoying the show. I'm 3 episodes into the 3rd season. I'm liking it better than the 2nd season. And I've never really been one of the over the top blood and guts. But for some reason, this show just makes it work. And it has its moments too, where it's very serious. There's a lot of depth from different realms of storytelling and entertainment in this show. And again, to Otto's point, I think this show is doing something that probably we didn't really expect, and we didn't expect out of the comic books itself. So you look at the spec market and how people spec and react to anything. Let's put MCU and DCEU aside. Even the DCEU, let's put that aside. I want to talk about indie properties specific to Netflix or, Amazon or etc. AMC, whatever the case may be, right? The one show that I really can pull out that holds weight is The Walking Dead. And there's a balance there. There's a symbiotic relationship between what the comic book did, what Kirkman did with the comic book, and how great that comic book run was in its early days, at least, and how great the show was and how they paired together. Now, I know some people felt like the show kind of tailed off, but at that point, it didn't matter. The Walking Dead is a classic now in both film media and comic book media. I can honestly say that people spec on indie properties simply because of The Walking Dead's success, and it never pans out. I think this one is. And again, I'm not trying to compare apples to apples to The Walking Dead. Like Otto said again, I don't think this book was ever what The Walking Dead was as a book, but I do feel that we're going to be years down the line, and however many seasons of this show that they do, I think this show is going to be something, and it's going to be something that we look back on. It's going to be a bit of a classic. And I think that's always going to bring people's attention to this book. So while I'm not, trying to overhype this book, I do have to give this book props because, again, I think there's long-term stamina here for this book. I think the show is doing it wonders, and I think it's going to be forever etched in the comic book community, whether it's the books themselves or the totality of comic book entertainment in film and media as well. And again, I just want to reiterate one more time. I like that it's not exploding in price, which makes me even more okay with giving it props.
That's interesting. That's fair. Otto, your take. Props or flops on this book here?
Props. A book. This is a book that I, for some reason, didn't really know about, heard about it, respected it, saw the show. Now I want to get the book, and now I want to see the difference in it. You know what I mean? I'd love to see the way it was written versus the way the writers do it. But other than Anthony Starr, man, can we just talk about Karl Urban, how he could be one of the most underrated actors of our time? I mean, he played Judge Dredd, never took his helmet off, and it was such a kick-ass movie. I mean, he was in Lord of the Rings. He was in Star Trek. Karl Urban is by far one of my most favorite modern actors, and he's just hitting it out of the park, and his one-liners in this, and it's just amazing, and real fun stuff. And again, something I might go after if I can find it. I'm not going to go after it in a 9.8. I'd like to read it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? If I can find it on the cheap, if it's on a wall for $50-$60, I'll get it. Do I need it slabbed? No. I'm not that much of a fan of the. If I listen, I want to say this: if I find a $60 or $70 copy on a wall and it's got no spine ticks, I'll submit it. But I'm not actively going to go buy the 9.8. But I will try to find it and read it just because this has really got me into that. So that's it. So definitely props for this.
That's fair. Before I give my kind of props or flops, I just want to remind you guys, we'd love to hear from you. There are a few people who gave their input on these books. Let us know what you think or on this specific book. Guys, there's one thing that prevents me from giving it props, and that is the show isn't as accessible as like an MCU is or DCEU. It's not as accessible. You're not going to bring those new eyeballs in. Walking Dead was kind of the same thing, and it just blew. It just was this phenom. That was, a different era, I think, which was before the streaming era. So this is a tough one for me. This is really tough. Let me rephrase it. I'm a little ambivalent to give it props because of the accessibility. That being said, the show is so unique in what you said. It is a satire, but the acting is superb.
Right.
This last episode, I'm not giving spoilers away, but the guy that got out, I cannot remember his name. The guy that got out, and he's talking to his ex-wife about getting back in.
Mother's Milk.
Yes.
Yep.
For me, at that moment, I'm like, the acting is phenomenal here. Like literally, and this moment right here is real. So it's not pure satire for that. And I think it's just an excellent show. And I think the show has sustainability down the road because it's so good. So that was the only thing I had holding me back from giving it props was the accessibility. I'm going to give it props as well. So we got a hat trick on the props right there. Again, it's incredible. And what you said about Karl Urban, like it can't be, he is underrated. No doubt about that. That was his decision to keep the helmet on for Judge Dredd. And you didn't need it. You didn't need it. You didn't need him. You're never like, take your helmet off. Because you knew what he was exuding at each scene. Anyways, all right. So we're moving on though, but that's a great book right there. Chris, second book from this list. What do you got?
All right. Second book is Star Wars 17. Star Wars 17 from the Dark Horse Run. This is volume 2 of the Dark Horse Run. I do believe it's first appearance of Quinlan Vos. Again, not really spoilers, but just to state why this is up here. Quinlan's name was mentioned by Obi-Wan in the Obi-Wan show. So I hope that doesn't give too much away. I mean, that's all I'll say. That's enough to know why. Oh, it piqued people's interest, and boom, here it is. So let's look at the numbers. 174% upward trend in sales when it hit the top 10. Last week's high in a 9.8, $409. That's of course when it hit the list. Now this week's $500 in that 9.8. That is a 22% increase in value. Last week's average raw, $76 when it hit the top 10. This week's average raw, $88. Little bit of an uptick. That is a 16% increase in value. All right, how do I feel about this book? I always like to stress that not only is it good to look at, okay, what was it selling for when it hit the top 10? Because that's when you can see how people react to whatever is making them hit the top 10. Okay, we got a name drop in a Star Wars TV show. So it hit the top 10, and you see this boost in units based solely on movie spec or live action spec. And then, of course, I look at what it's doing after that hype. Is it cooling off? Is the hype still going? Seems that the hype's still going, right? But it's also good to look at what the book's been doing prior to any of this. And this book wasn't a book that was a dollar bin book for a long time. It wasn't moving many units. And it definitely wasn't commanding what it's commanding right now, but it was commanding a decent amount. I don't have the exact numbers with me right now, but just doing the research, because I like to use it as a tool to say, how much is this FOMO buying? Meaning, how much of it is really just people paying crazy amounts without even giving it the opportunity to let the supply and the demand catch up to each other. I didn't really see that happening with this book. If that happened, I would have given this book props, probably just flops, just based on that alone because of the volatility. Now, I'm still wary about giving this props or flops, and I'll tell you why. Still, because of the fact that the live action spec market right now is extremely volatile. It's extremely volatile. I just did a live stream last Friday, and it was called F Your Spec. And it was with special guest Bronze Age Nerd. Go check him out, guys, if you haven't subbed up to Bronze Age Nerd's channel. Great YouTuber. And basically, we addressed the fact of how emotional we're getting when whether it's an announcement or just a rumor. And I brought up some examples like Mephisto or Omega Red. Those were rumors, right? Everyone was talking about Mephisto showing up in WandaVision. Everyone was talking about Omega Red showing up in Falcon and Winter Soldier. And then, he's going to show up in the Black Widow movie. Never happened. But then we even talked about actual announcements like the Timekeepers in Loki or Illuminati. And again, spoilers. You might want to mute this, but I'm going to say spoiler. A little bit of one without giving too much away. The Timekeepers in Illuminati didn't pan out, right? Like slap you in the face. Haha, we got you. And we looked at all the books that correlated with these characters. And they dropped anywhere from 50 to over 60% in value and again, I took averages. I wasn't looking at highs or lows and distorting the data like some YouTubers do. I took 1 to 2 month averages from when we got either the announcement or the trailer. And then I took the averages from when the movies had dropped or the TV shows dropped. Once we realized that, that spec didn't pan out or that spec never happened. 50 to 60% drop. So what's the point that I'm trying to make here? Well, I know that was all Marvel, but let's talk about Star Wars. Again, spoilers if you haven't seen Boba Fett.
Obi-Wan.
I won't say too much. I'll just say this.
Obi-Wan.
What's that?
Obi-Wan.
No. Boba Fett.
My bad.
No, it's all good. I'm going to talk about Obi-Wan too. There was the character. I'll just say this. There was the character that showed up in Boba Fett. And, oh my God, this character's in Boba Fett. Oh, no, he's not. Boom, gone. But then, yes, Obi-Wan. Now we get another character that showed up in Obi-Wan, nope, here they are. Nope, now they're gone. But I don't know. Maybe there's something we don't know. Now we get an announcement or a name drop of this character. So what I'm trying to say is that even in Star Wars, these specs that we get all hyped up about, and we spend money, and a $20 book turns into a $50 book, a $200 9.8 turns into a $500 9.8, et cetera, et cetera. The characters show up briefly, and then they're gone. Quinlan Vos. Props or flops? I am going to give this one more thing. Jeff, you and I both for a long time now have been talking about the Star Wars media and how it's real. Star Wars comic books, whether by collectors or by true Star Wars fandom, have been undervalued for a long time, and I still stand by that. I do. But I am very wary, again, about the spec market right now, and I'm very wary about the economy. I'm going to give this book flops right now. I'm going to give it flops right now, simply in the context of why it made this list. I think that if you're going out and trying to buy this book right now, simply because Obi-Wan said this character's name in an episode, you're going to lose money if you're trying to make money for a flip off of this book because of a couple factors. One, it could be years before Quinlan Vos even shows up. If that's the case, people are going to forget that Obi-Wan even said his name, especially because of the economy right now. We're not everybody is blowing money left and right on comic books because somebody said a name. People are going to forget this really fast. Or maybe we do see Quinlan, and maybe you buy it now, and maybe we actually see Quinlan in the next Mandalorian season. I mean, it's similar time periods. That can happen, but maybe we already got an Obi-Wan series 2, so maybe it's in Obi-Wan series 2, and so maybe it's in the next year or so. Who knows? Maybe the book jumps when we actually know that that Quinlan's coming. But what role is Quinlan going to play? How long will Quinlan be there? And how much is this? I mean, and look, I'll end on this note. No longer are the days where, and it was short-lived, right? No longer are the days where the Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni era is bridging together the Star Wars fandom. Remember that? Remember long ago, like not even 2 years ago, when Mandalorian came and everyone was like, yeah, that's how we do Star Wars. You had people that loved The Last Jedi saying, this is great. You had people that hated The Last Jedi saying, this is great. And you had everyone, putting on their little flower, things on their head and putting on their, flower dresses, their hippie bell bottoms, and they're dancing around, playing the banjo. Everyone loves Star Wars. Well, guess what? That didn't last long, because if you've been on the internet as of late, you either love it or you hate it. It's just everyone hates Obi-Wan because it's this, it's that. That's not even there anymore, folks. We are back to being completely divided, whether it's because of just ignorant stuff, whether it's because of politics, or whether it's because simply Star Wars fandom can't be satisfied. I'm very worried about this book being something that could be sustained with all of these big what ifs and question marks lingering over the head of all things Star Wars right now.
Fair enough. And before we get to Otto's opinion on this, Chris and I are always like, hey, buy what you want. Like, we're just giving our personal opinions on these things. If it's worth $500 and a 9.8 to you, go for it. That's money well spent if it's worth it to you. So don't, this is just our opinion. We're starting a conversation with it. That being said, Otto, your thoughts, props or flops on this?
We're going to start off with the flop on this. This isn't something that I'm going to go chase. This is something where I've always liked to say my collecting style for me, this isn't a marathon. This isn't a sprint. It's a marathon. I'm not going to go out and get this. This is a FOMO situation. Just because Obi-Wan said it. I mean, is there something for this? But in Star Wars, in the Star Wars books, there are so many different first appearances and so many different keys that you've got to filter out what's important to you. Ahsoka. I wasn't a fan of Ahsoka. I didn't like her in the cartoon. Rosario Dawson, she did a great job. I thought those were great episodes. I still don't own it. I'm not going to go out and buy it in a high grade. If I'm digging in a long box and it's there, I'll take it. But I respect everybody that loves that character. In the Star Wars universe, there's so many different characters for you to love and hate. And this isn't something that I'm going to go after. I mean, like I said, when would I go after this? Well, when it would be on my radar, let's say, we'll say that it would be on my radar. Then, you follow the news. And if they say, Chris has just been named to play this character, when they name somebody, then you might go after it and you try to flip it. You know what I mean? Or you buy it. And if it's a character you like, you keep it. But again, I'm not chasing this. This to me is so low on my radar. And just, I enjoy Star Wars for other reasons. Star Wars was my first love. I was 8 years old when I saw Darth Vader come on to the Tantive 4 and just wreck house. And Star Wars means so many different things to me, and it means so much more to me. And to see all these things and to talk about characters like this, I've been saying this for a long time. Everybody, a year ago, everybody was talking about null, that kind of thing. I mean, my daughter's going into high school next year. I made a bet with somebody. My daughter will be out of college before we see null. Okay. I mean, I'll be closer to Social Security than anything. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of those things. So if it happens, and I'm wrong, man. I'm not afraid to say it's wrong. I've missed out on books, but again, it's not my collecting style. It's not something that's important to me or something that I'm going to go after. But again, you see it, the cover, educate yourself on it. If you find it, get it. If you're digging and somebody's got it for $20, get better for $20, but again, I would never tell you how to spend your money, but I would just flop this all day. Again, Star Wars means so much more to me than this. So
you guys, honestly, I agree with both of you. With that being said, I'm going to preface this too. I would never spend $80 on a raw book, $50 on this. If I, maybe 20, 30, sure. Because Star Wars is very deliberate. And there was a moment there about Quinlan Voss where he recites one of his lines. Quinlan Voss was also in the Clone Wars. They're very deliberate in the things that they do. Why did they waste that 10 seconds right there? Not waste. Sure. Why did they emphasize this character?
It's there for a reason. I agree with you.
Right.
I'm not going to say he's going to show up in Obi-Wan, but I do think that there could be something to that. And with that, for me, it's a props, right? Not in those prices.
But what if he shows up not in a live action? What if he shows up in a cartoon? Ahsoka, I guess, could be the outlier, but those characters that show up as cartoons, they're, at least in my opinion, from what the books don't spike like the other books do. So again, he could show. Listen, the character could show up, right? They could show up. Everything is done for a reason. They put things. I mean, they put things in Iron Man that was brought 10 years later in Infinity Gauntlet. You know what I mean? Like this stuff is thought out. It's there, but again, you don't know what kind of media is it going to be. Live action? Is it going to be animated? So but again, that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like buying a rookie card and he hasn't made it into the big leagues yet, right? Because action is the big league.
I like
we
that.
can all agree on that. So you are taking that chance, no doubt. But somebody brought up in our audience, I can't remember who it was. It may have been like somebody like Matt Stadge or somebody, when the Illuminati was coming on Doctor Strange. Somebody said, well, what happens if Wanda kills them all? Literally, somebody said that before the film came out. And here we are. Are people chasing those books now? No. So you're absolutely right about that, Otto. No doubt about that. But it still doesn't persuade me to go flops. I'm going to go props on this book. I'm going to be the outlier out of the three of us to say that. So, all right. Moving on. We have one more book, Chris. One more book. That was a long one. That was the meat in the
hamburger.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do we got?
Star Wars is always, man, it's definitely tough because like I said, Jeff, we can have a whole conversation and do a whole show on, the longevity of the totality of Star Wars, but this one now, My number one pick. This is a very interesting one, and it kind of hits home to me too, for some different reasons. And my number one pick is Avengers Forever number 6. So, for those that don't know about this book, let's talk about this book real quick. This is the first appearance of Vibranium Man, and get Vibranium Man on the cover there. Enter Vibranium Man, right?
Cover appearance too.
Yeah. So okay. So this is what it is. Vibranium Man is a different, a multiversal variant of T'Challa. All right. And in this, so let's put things into context. First off, this is Vibranium Man's first appearance, and then Vibranium Man is gone. Because Vibranium Man in the story turns into Star Panther. Something, I'm going to give it all away. Something happens in the story that changes the character, and then he takes on this mantle of Star Panther. So, that's context. Let's look at these numbers real quick. 228% upward trend in sales when it hit the top 10. Last week's high was a 9.8 sale of $89.99 on eBay. This week's $89.99 on eBay. But get this. This is a big question mark. These were both pre-sales from the same eBay seller. All right, hold your thoughts. Last week's average raw, $15. This week's average raw, $11. That's a 27% decrease in value. I always say take that with a grain of salt because it's an average. You don't know if there was more high grades maybe being sold the week before that could have distorted it one way or the other. But there was an outlier of the last week too that sold for $35, but it was an outlier. I didn't even include that in the average. There's big question marks here with what's going on with these graded books. First off, there was no other graded books for sale that had sold any grade. I forgot to check the census. I like doing that too. But if you look at this seller's eBay, this seller has multiple 9.8 pre-sales. If you look at the image, you can tell he photoshopped like a blank CGC label with the 9.8 and then put the image of this book on top of it. And it even said in the description, like fast tracked, expected delivery July or something like that.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. This person is basically either they're a shop owner or a dealer of some sort that has had this book or multiple copies of this book and is now doing the what do you call it, where you pay the $5 for the 9.8
the pre-screen. Yep.
Now they're doing the pre-screen and sending all these books in fast tracked because there is some type of rumor going on now. Of course, what's the rumor? Well, we have Black Panther 2 coming later this year. We're getting so close to it. And we don't have, this is why I said this is close to home with me. We don't have Chadwick Boseman. We already know that Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige and everyone has come out saying that we're not, recasting the character of T'Challa. So what does that mean? Oh, Shuri's taking up the mantle. Oh, M'Baku's going to take up the mantle. Or now that we are really deep into the multiverse, it would be so easy to bring in Idris. What's his name? Desmond Idris. I forget his first name. To play a variant of T'Challa. Now I say Idris because remember, Jeff, I said nobody's replacing Chadwick unless it's this guy. And guys, if you have watched the show Snowfall, he's the main character. He plays Franklin in Snowfall. Anyways, people are thinking that they're going to bring a new actor in to play a variant of T'Challa. Now, also, you got to understand that Kevin Feige is behind the comic book side of Marvel right now. So you got to think this. Where is this rumor coming from? Well, you got a new book comes out that's showcasing a variant. Could it be? And remember, I said this a lot, Jeff. Remember in the 2010s when the MCU started booming? You know, we got the Avengers film and it just took off from there. And then we knew the Infinity Saga was coming. What did the comic books do? They started seeing what was going on in the films and then rehashing that out in the comic books. When we want the comic books to tell the stories, and then we want the movies to kind of take from the comic books, even if they switch it up a little bit and make it their own thing. We don't want to rehash back into the comics. And I've been saying with Kevin Feige in charge of the comics, we're going to see more of that. They're going to be telling fresh, unique stories that are going to be taking place in the comics. And then we might see those pan out some form or fashion in the films or the TV shows. So I think there is valid spec on this book for a new book because it just came out, 2 weeks ago now. And I get it. I understand. Everything that I just said makes me understand why people would want to jump on this book. But somebody is sitting there, either a reseller or a store that has an eBay store and they're sitting on a bunch of copies, or you had somebody go into a store when these came out, they picked up a bunch of copies off the shelf and they're pre-selling them, doing a pre-screen. So this person sets the tone of a $90 purchase point. I wouldn't let this be indicative of what this book is doing or can do on the market. Because if you think about it, depending on how many books this person's shipping out in the order, you already got $20-something plus taxes and shipping. I always estimate a modern book being $30. If you're fast tracking it, what are they charging for fast track now? $15 a book? It's crazy. That's $45 for this book right here. Estimated average. If half of them don't come back, a 9.8, and you're pre-screening them, that's $5 that you got to put on top of the cost of the books that do come back, 9.8. So you're looking at this individual spending about $50 just to get this book graded. So you're really paying $90 to eat a lot of this individual's costs. So you're probably paying roughly around $40 for the actual book to be in a 9.8 slab. That's not bad. It's not bad. Because if people are FOMOing on this book and there was an actual 9.8 on the market, on auction, what can happen to that book? It can go way above $90. Way above $90 because people might be in their FOMO. Props or flops? I think that this individual that is pre-selling these books is actually doing people that want to speculate on this a favor. What am I saying by that? Does that mean I'm giving this props for you to go and telling you to go spend $90 on this book and a pre-sale 9.8? No. But if you're a gambling man or a gambling woman and you want to invest in this book simply because you want to take a gamble, if you're willing to walk into that casino with $90 in your pocket, knowing that, hey man, I love the risk. I'm going to walk in here with $90 and I know that I can walk out with $50. Maybe I can walk out with $200, but maybe I can walk out with not a dime left in my pocket. If you're that person spending $90 on this book and a 9.8, it might be something for you, because what did I just say? If this spec, this rumor spec continues even just for the next few weeks, we might see a book go up for auction, and the way that people have been specking on books, it might get bid up to $200. You never know. Personally, me, I wouldn't spend any type of money like that. But people are paying 11, 15. I think the highest this week was 19. That was the highest for this book, Raw. And I'll tell you, if something happens with this type of variant showing up in the MCU, you never know what it can do. So I'm not mad at anybody taking a $4.99 cover price book and paying $11 or $15 for it if they think that something can happen with it. Just for that reason, I'll give this book props. And again, before I wrap up, I want to sum this up one more time and why I'm giving this props. It's still low risk. You're not spending a whole bunch of crap money. You're just paying maybe 2 to 3 times cover price. And you are, and you know, or you better know, that you're taking a gamble. Because, quite honestly, the chances of this happening are probably slim. But hey, you never know. And that's what I got for you.
Okay, all right. Well, I got an opinion on this, but we got to let guests go first. Otto.
Thank you. Cool cover. I wouldn't even buy it. I wouldn't even buy it to grade it. It's not something that I would go after. Cool. I love Vibranium. The story behind it is great. When they talked about it in Black Panther and the country of Wakanda and everything like that. I love the lore. But again, cool cover. Love that he's on it. Would I buy it? Probably for the cover. Am I going to go out and grade it? No. Am I going to find and grade it? So this is a flop for me. This is, something that I do it. But again, listen, if you're a gambling man, hey, listen, I hit 16 all the time. I'm not afraid. I'll hit 16 all day and yell a 4, and if I break, I break, but it's, more times than not, hopefully I'll make a hand. But, I wouldn't even go after this. I don't know anything about this. So this is definitely not in my wheelhouse of collecting right now. So yeah, but I really appreciate the information. That was really thorough.
And you're, absolutely fair in what you're saying. And I'm definitely leaning towards your thought behind this as well. I'll add just one more thing to your thought, Otto, and that is everybody's trying to find the next Tosin. You know what I mean? Like, because Tosin was hot for how long? And I don't see it. I think this is a shot in the dark. I think it's a little bit like it's the whole, I don't know, racing to get to the top in a way. I don't know. I would get it for cover. Definitely get it for cover. But overall, I give this flops. No doubt about that. I would not pay any of those. Nothing more than cover on this thing. I could probably go to one of my local comic shops and it's still there. I haven't been. Yeah, I haven't checked out new books in a bit, but I know of one place that would probably still have this. So I could be wrong, but I would give this book flops, no doubt.
Let me say one more thing too, because I think it's very important. Again, and my light is like hating me right now. I don't sit and base my opinion. Again, I'm saying this for all the viewers here, because we all collect differently, and we all can gauge a comic book on the market and how we spend our money and why we spend our money in different ways. And that's why I said, Jeff, I said this before. If we were specifically looking at 9.8 values, any book that I talk about on these lists every week, what would I give them? Every single book.
Oh, flops.
I'd give them all flops.
Yeah.
If we were specifically looking at every book, we'd do the same thing in the 9.8 sales. I'd be saying the same thing. This segment would take 60 seconds because Jeff would show each image. We'd look at the 9.8 sale price, whether it was up, down, steady, and I'd look at it and I say 9.8, $200, flops. Next, boom, flops. Because I have never bought a 9.8 book in my life, and I probably never will, especially for modern books. This book right here, I told you all specifically, do I think that this is even going to happen? I doubt it. But I gave context to, well, you do have Kevin Feige behind on the comics, and who knows? So my train of thought on giving this props is this. It's specifically from the factor of looking at how volatile the spec market has been. We have seen worse books that are just ridiculous because we saw somebody's left toe. And they're out the gate. They're out the gate. Back issue book from 1999 that nobody even whatever, and they're selling for $80. Easy. 40 copies over last week. They hit 40. They hit 60. Now they're selling for 80. And some random 9.8 sells for freaking $400. So, again, I just want everyone watching to know, you got to understand what you're doing. You got to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. There is almost, unless you are completely dirt poor and you're 5 months behind on your car note and your bills, and you're not feeding your kids and they're running around with no shoes or socks on, don't even spend $15 on this book. Go get your goddamn kids some socks. But unless you're not that, and you specifically look at speculation, tell me, when you're looking at a cost benefit analysis, where even for this book, the benefit might be very slim, your cost is just as slim. So if you want to go spend $11 to $15 on this book, it's like putting $10 to $15 in a penny stock. $10 to $15 in a penny stock. Essentially, if that stock completely crashes and you're left with literally a penny, anybody that's investing in the market is going to walk away from that and say, well, at least I rolled the dice, right? So that's my context on why I gave this book props the way I did. Everyone else's opinions, Jeff's and Otto's opinions on this book on why they gave it props is very valid for their perspectives. And that's why nobody's right or wrong here. And you all have to really dive into each book and what you're doing as a collector and figure out what's right for you.
Well said. Again, we're just here giving our individual opinions. You guys, if you feel it's worth it to you to spend that much money, or exceed, in any sort of, get a 9.8, what have you, go for it. If it's worth it to you, it's worth it to you. All right, right there, that ends the top 10 look back props or flops. Looking forward to that list next week.